They say your name is just a word, but the day I tore open that registered mail envelope, my heart lurched as if my very existence was being squeezed in a tight, cold fist. My name, 3 innocent syllables, was stamped in block letters on a bar's faded sign thrown across a notice of overdue debt. My body stood still, but it felt as if the floor beneath me tilted sharply, sending my whole life sliding helplessly to one side. I stood, unnamed and unrecognized, before a door whose key I had somehow lost, with no one to turn to and nowhere to hide. I am the eldest daughter, just past 50, standing quietly at my mother's side as her age edges toward 80. I am a wife to young Sue, a steadfast man whose pride sometimes sparkled to me as charm, and to my late father as danger. I've made my way through enough of life's clutter to think I understood its tricks, or so I told myself. My youth was marked by words like gentle and upright, so when I married young Sue, every word of praise turned into a heavier stone of responsibility. My mother rarely protested, just shook her head silently. My father, ever the reserved type, kept his comments folded tightly inside. Their silence always weighed more than any scolding. From the first year of our marriage, a cool undercurrent, tension between my family and young Sue, drifted beneath every family gathering. Holidays were sharp, with wordless rivalries, a discomfort that settled under the table and chose not to leave. My father's eyes would cool when young Sue excitedly discussed his latest business ideas, dismissing them as too far from reality. Each side grew more entrenched. I learned to hold my breath, invisible between them, hoping to diffuse a battle that never quite exploded, but seeped steadily into the walls of our daily life. When young Sue first suggested he wanted to open a small restaurant, I felt an anxious thrill. I wanted to give my husband, who drifted between temporary jobs, a chance at a stable life. Yet his finances had already crashed long ago. His name alone was a locked door to any loan or lease. So when he delicately asked if I could use my name for the paperwork, it seemed almost reasonable. My credit was clean, my bank account composed. Without really knowing whether I was crossing a line, I signed. I consoled myself that I was only lending my name to help the man I loved chase a dream. For several months, the world was calm. Sale sheets stacked neatly. Bank deposits arrived with a quiet, hopeful rhythm. But by the 6th month, a subtle desperation crept into young Sue's manner. The cash dried up. Calls from suppliers became threatening. Rent fell behind. Tax notices, cold and official, began to pile up like barricades. I spent my days on the phone, begging for extensions, learning how to delay a credit card payment by a day or two. I'd come home at midnight, smelling of cheap oil, exhaustion as heavy as a pile of shipping boxes pressed against my front door each morning. I kept telling myself that love meant enduring discomfort, that if I hung on, if I bore with it in silence, that things would settle. Then, in the 8th month, the word tax audit entered our home quietly but irrevocably. Out of all the names in the files, mine was the only one that mattered. Every page of ink, every official question circled back to me. It was as if my hands had conjured this trouble. Young Sue never slept easy again. His sighs grew heavier each night, and I would pull the blanket up over him, trying to warm the growing frost in both our hearts. In the middle of this storm, reality bent in another unexpected direction. In the crumbed, harsh light of the tax office's consultation desk, someone helping me go through a stack of documents looked up. and I realized it was Jongwoo, my first love from decades ago. The last time I saw him, he had slipped a small wristwatch onto my arm, a gesture from a boy to a girl who still believed in the world's endless possibilities. Now grown older, he had become a tax specialist. His eyes calmer, his hair streaked with grey. I fumbled my explanations, grateful yet embarrassed by how quickly my composure fled. That night, I found myself underneath the old street lamp just outside our apartment. The same lamp that guided me home as a student, the same one that now flickered over my worried, middle-aged shadow. I heard the soft fluttering of bygone days, the sound of youthful courage falling away like autumn leaves. I silently repeated the word repentance, wondering, what if I had questioned Young-soo one more time before signing, or waited just a little longer? It was useless now, but strangely, all those unasked questions pressed me deeper down. Then came the siege of reality. Cards maxed out, landlords, lawyers, business cards slipped under our door, government letters filled with threats of seizure and fines. Each word, penalty, delinquency, foreclosure, sounded like a drumbeat against my ribs. I cashed out my retirement savings, told our child less and less, giving bland reassurances I doubted myself. My mother read my worry, spooning more kimchi onto my plate without comment. My father's health suddenly collapsed. His hospital room pressed down on us like a secret interrogation chamber. Every day called for a new kind of courage. Some evenings, as the debt counseling center's number vibrated endlessly on my phone, I would sit crouched by the front door, watching the phone's pale light, forgetting how to compose my breath. My name, so familiar once, now dragged me deeper into the dark, anchoring me in a place I never wanted to be. Jongwoo began sifting through our documents, listing what I'd need to prepare. While hunting for receipts and contracts, I noticed oddities. Parts of the business's reported revenue matched up strangely with unfamiliar credit accounts. Some contracts appeared in duplicate, oddly signed. A supplier's name turned up that was neither Young-soo's nor anyone he knew. Numbers and signatures began to look like a tangle of strangers betraying each other. I leaned my forehead against the cold window, uneasy at the trail of inconsistencies. Meanwhile, the old tension between my parents and Young-soo didn't fade. It grew bitter with each hospital visit. My father, eyes dimmed by illness, held my hand, telling me, without saying it at all, to rest. While Young-soo rarely dared cross his gaze, I was forced to acknowledge what years of living had hidden. Some rifts, given enough time, run too deep to heal in this lifetime. One night, the restaurant's power was cut off. I unlocked the door and walked in, carrying the chill across my shoulders like a shroud. Flies dotted the shelves, food in the refrigerator was spoiled, the floor sticky underfoot. Young-soo sat slumped, broken. I quietly reached for the mop, realizing perhaps for the first time how dignity is earned and lost in the simplest acts. That was the night I watched the threshold of my own life, uncertain on which side I belonged any longer. As I continued collecting paperwork for the audit, digging through my late father's toolbox, I discovered a slim yellow file. Inside were copies of my business registration, lease agreement, and next to it, a phone number and a date that exactly matched our lease signing. Why had my father kept his own set? It seemed a small question, but the ominous paper suggested deeper waves yet to come. Jongwoo quietly explained step by step what remediation would be needed, adjustments, appeals, forms I had never heard of. I'd sometimes pause, overcome by my own tears, as he gently let the coffee cool, letting me hold on to my composure. This reunion with my first love wasn't about rekindled passion. It was a silent comfort, a bus stop from the past. But comfort doesn't pay off debts or save a crumbling business. Things only worsened. The landlord gave notice to terminate the lease. Unpaid bills multiplied. Suppliers stopped deliveries. The tax office sent a warning. Property to be seized. Young-soo grew thinner, and many nights I sat alone in the bathroom, staring at nothing, while our child quietly closed a notebook, hinting at dropping out of college. I couldn't let that go. At times, I wondered if life hands out its greatest tests all at once, and whether anyone ever really learns the rules for surviving back-to-back storms. Gradually, I recognized the fear blooming quietly inside me. Was I really trying to save Young-soo, or was I clinging to the idea of proving my love to my father and to myself? What did I truly gain or lose by lending my name to someone else's gamble? These questions hunted me day and night, but each morning they returned, undiminished, refusing to disappear. Then, one afternoon at Jong-woo's office, a routine inventory sheet from a supplier caught my eye. It was issued by a wholesaler in Young-soo's friend's name, but scrawled in the corner, unmistakable, was my father's handwriting. He always circled numbers the same exact way, and here a familiar check mark appeared by the transaction date. My stomach turned cold. Had my father been involved in these affairs, or had he simply kept watch over what I thought was mine? I felt a crude doubt, scratchy and persistent, nestle in my throat. That night, I dug out the file again. At the very back was a folded sheet, worn and heavily creased, a government form for anonymous reporting. The subject was my restaurant. The contents mentioned a suspicion of the illegal name lending, set in bold, just like a red stamp. A faint pencil note in my father's handwriting lingered in the margin. The date predated my first overdue notice by several weeks. I felt myself pulled downward, as if being sucked into deep water. And suddenly, with clarity, I understood. The true twist was not some distant enemy or a jealous neighbor. It was my father. It was my father who had gathered those copies and combed through unfamiliar accounts. My father who, seeing my name at the center of risky contracts, had submitted a formal report, anonymous, out of sight. The process looked like punishment, and for a moment, I let myself feel betrayed. Then my eyes fell on a single word, scrawled in the margin: protection. In that instant, I understood his stubbornness for what it truly was. Not anger or control, but love disguised in its most difficult form. He threw a stone into the current to drag me out of deeper danger, doing the harshest thing only to save me before I could break the law and our family could lose everything. When I told Young-soo, his shoulders finally drooped in silent acceptance. Maybe, for the first time in his life, he truly saw my father, not as an adversary, but as a worried, flawed elder doing what seemed necessary. There was no shouting, no apologies, just a kind of slow, painful reckoning, and the truth of overdue humility finally arrived. For Young-soo and me, it was, in its own way, a last bit of dignity reclaimed. With Jong-woo's steady guidance, we settled the fines in installments. We filed for formal closure of the business, cleaned out every debt. Young-soo's restaurant shut its doors for good. We sold our old car, cashed in our savings, worked extra weekend jobs. I went back to work at a local shop, while Young-soo took on deliveries by day and factory hours at night. My mother, always practical, clung to her own routines, insisting she never reheated rice, as if to keep the present from spoiling. Bit by bit, ordinary life returned, and for the first time in years, I could truly breathe again. My chance reunion with Jong-woo faded as quietly as it had arrived. He returned to his professional distance. I folded memories of his youthful smile away, grateful for a brief comfort that came just when I needed it, but never overstepped its place. Months after my father's funeral, my mother handed me a thin notebook, its pages layered with my father's handwriting. On the first page, the name of our restaurant. Underneath, a restless vow, as if warning never to mortgage the house. On the last page, my name appeared again and again, quietly, as if he was still repeating it for protection. I sat with the notebook on my knees, imagining his expression, remembering years of silent tug-of-war with Young-soo, and the truth that all those arguments were less about dragging me down and more about keeping me from drifting too far to return. Reflecting now, it's clear to me that the meaning wasn't found in the conflict, but in the surviving. I learned painfully that love is not an excuse to make reckless choices. If you lend your name, you must be prepared to live with the full weight of that decision. Young-soo now asks before signing anything, holding back when needed. He's worked to explain his past mistakes to our child and to truly understand my father's harshness as measured, if imperfect, love. It took years, but it finally became over real, honest repentance. These days, I care for small plants on our sun-washed balcony. Digging in the soil smooths out the rough edges of my heart. My husband tinkers with woodworking, and in the drawer he built, I've stored my father's notebook. Whenever I open it, I see how noise from the past becomes a quiet kind of shelter, one that looks, from the outside, like failure, but to me is the last step before truly growing up. Life is always turning the next page without warning. Some days begin with a hard wrench, others with the softest quiet. But now I see more clearly. Love is not resting on someone's name, but fiercely protecting it. Sometimes even from those we love most. Stubbornness, I learned, is often just another word for wanting to keep someone safe. And the twist that changes everything isn't always what happens outside, but the moment your heart sees an old truth anew. So, I find myself asking you, quietly, carefully, when temptation, pride, and longing all collide in your life, how far would you go in the name of love? And at what point would you stop to consider what you might lose?